People who have a few deep friends they can be vulnerable and safe with, they live longer, they have less medical problems, less psychological problems, make more money. It makes that much difference. And those that don't have that die earlier and sicker. So it's a big deal.
It's our limiting beliefs that ultimately keep us from becoming the best we're capable of becoming. Something's got to change, but that change has to happen first on the inside. It's time to get unstuck. It's time to get your why back. It's never too late. Let's start today.
Helping you design your roadmap to wholeness from the inside out. This is Win Today. And now, here's your host, Christopher Cook.
Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me this week. And thank you to so many of you who have taken a moment to rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts. In fact, I wanted to take just a second and read a recent review from a listener. She said, "Longtime listener, first-time reviewer, but I can't talk about one episode in particular because every one of them in some way, shape, or form has positively impacted at least one area of my life." She went on to write, "I feel so filled up and ready to take on the world after each episode." So huge thanks for that review. And hey, if you haven't done so already, will you join the many others that have reviewed the show and take 30 seconds to simply rate and write a review of Win Today? You know, my friend, doing so helps grow the listenership of Win Today, and that would mean so much to me. Huge thanks for that. Well, let's jump into this week's content, and I want to begin by saying this. We all need more energy. Raise your hand if you do. I'm raising mine right now. You know, energy, that is the vitality that helps us stay motivated and focused and productive in life. We know we receive energy from good nutrition, along with working out, getting adequate sleep, and maintaining positivity. But there's another major source for the energy we need, and that is having the right kinds of relationships with others. Not the ones that drain us, but the ones that refuel us. And joining us today to talk all about this subject is my friend, a mentor, and New York Times best-selling author of the Boundaries series, Dr. John Townsend. Dr. John Townsend is a best-selling author of more than 30 books that have collectively sold over 10 million copies. He's a leadership consultant and psychologist, as well as the founder of the Townsend Leadership Program, as well as the Townsend Institute for Leadership and Counseling, where he speaks regularly on leadership and success. Dr. Townsend consults with businesses and leaders on a national level and also coaches family businesses in success and relationship strategies. In today's conversation, Dr. Townsend is going to show you why we all need the fuel of relational nutrients from others, and in turn, how to provide them to others. He'll also detail the specific types of people who can either be energy sources or energy drains, and he's going to give you concrete steps to help you cultivate relationships with those who will help you be all you were meant to be. I really trust this conversation will add a lot of value to you and to every important relationship in your life. Right now, here's the conversation with Dr. John Townsend. Well, Dr. John Townsend, it's the third time you've been on Win Today. I am so thrilled you're here. Welcome back, my friend.
Thanks, Chris.
It's going to be a good one. And today we're talking all about relationships. I think it's a space that you live in so well. And I think in theory, Dr. Townsend, we all know, relationships are key to a healthy life. We can't live in isolation. But there's another layer to this that I want to talk about today with you. And that's what you call people fuel. What does that phrase mean?
Well, it's the title of my new book that's out now. And the idea is that, life has demands on us, Chris. I mean, we all need more energy and focus and creativity to get life done. And most of us know a lot of those sources of energy. For example, we're supposed to work out, we're supposed to sleep right and take our supplements and all that. And also we're supposed to have a positive attitude and great things like that. But kind of the missing piece is the people part. And now the research is showing us, especially the neuropsychological research, which is where I live, that you've got to have the right kinds of relationship to have what you need to do something about it. So the idea of people fuel is I've created a structure for maximizing the good you get out of your relationships and the good you give to your relationships through a concept called relational nutrients. And here's the big idea is, you know how, Chris, in our bodies, we all need bionutrients. We know about that. If you have enough calcium, great things are great. If you don't have enough calcium, you start to get bone problems like osteoporosis. Or if you don't have enough iron, you get anemia in your bloodstream. So we know that if you don't have these supplements, these elements, these nutrients, these bionutrients, they don't go right. Well, the concept that the book's about is that there are also relational nutrients, just like bionutrients, except instead of taking a pill or having something in your meal, it's a conversation between my brain and your brain and your brain and my brain, and we transfer nutrients to each other. And that's what gives us energy and helps us be resourceful and to persevere and be creative all day. Mm-hmm. And the way the model works is there's 22 relational nutrients. Now, that's kind of a lot. We're all busy. But I've got them now down into 4 quadrants in the book. And those 4 quadrants are the 4 areas that those 22 are in. Do you mind if I just go into what they are, Chris?
Let's just go for it, yes.
Okay. Quadrant 1 is the nutrients called be present. Now, what does be present mean? Well, it means shut up and listen for once. Instead of giving somebody advice when they've got a struggle, sometimes we just need to know somebody understands us and they're with us and they're nice to us and they're compassionate with us. They understand our struggle. When I wake up in the morning, I don't think, who's going to give me advice today? Well, if it's a business situation, maybe. I just kind of wake up going, is somebody going to hear me today? Let's be present with each other. The second quadrant is convey the good, meaning sometimes we just need somebody to tell us they believe in us. I just need somebody to encourage me and say, I know you're thinking things aren't changing, but I believe in you, and I believe in you maybe more than you believe in yourself, and to affirm us and just show respect to us. Let's convey the good. The third one is to provide reality. Sometimes we need not only presence and the good, we also need wisdom and information and data and truth and feedback from other people that would go, oh, well, I never thought about it that way. Maybe that's why I'm in the situation I'm in. And then the fourth category or quadrant is called call to action, because at the end of the day, if anybody wants to be successful in business and in leadership or in love and marriage and family, they've got to be able to have behavior. And call to action means I need somebody to give me a step. I need somebody to give me a good piece of advice. I need somebody to tell me some kind of a sequence of events that'll help me. And if you've got those 4 in your life, being present with each other, conveying the good, calling to action, and providing reality, life is not perfect, but life's a lot better because you've got the right nutrients in your head so that you can persevere. And I think that every person on the planet needs all 4 of those in some form or fashion every single week. We need to get them for ourselves, by the right people in our lives. We need to give them to other people on a regular basis.
That's so strong. Let's build this house then from the foundation up. I want to take a step backwards if we could and ask you to teach us about functional needs versus relational needs in the context of a relationship. And I suppose I'd love to ask then why relational needs often aren't met.
Well, it's a great question, Chris. Relational needs are often not met because we're afraid of rejection. It's easier to say, I'll help you, fix your kid's bicycle, or I'll bring a cup of sugar to you and I'll help you with this task. That's what functional needs are. They're task-based needs, and we all need help like that. I mean, if I've got a flat tire, I want a friend to help me with my functional need of filling up a flat tire. But relational needs are scarier because somebody could reject us. Because what if you are with somebody who you get kind of vulnerable with, and you say, my marriage is sort of tough right now, or I've got a kid that's going upside down, or my business isn't what it should be, and they judge you, and they say, well, I thought you had your act together, or, well, so what? And they're all of a sudden you're out there, and you put your stuff out there, and they were really kind of not nice to you. Well, the lesson there is, don't do that again. And so we're more comfortable in the functional task world than the other world. And the problem is with this, then we end up with low energy and all kinds of things. In fact, the research on the relational needs versus the functional needs, all this longitudinal research they're doing is that people who have a few deep friends they can be vulnerable and safe with, they live longer, they have less medical problems, less psychological problems, make more money. It makes that much difference. And those that don't have that die earlier and sicker. So it's a big deal.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's drill down on the dynamics of relationships if we could, because we all have needs in relationships. But Dr. Townsend, what's the difference then between having normal, healthy needs in a relationship and then becoming a needy person? What does that look like?
Well, the technical term for that person is dependent. And dependent people, they sort of never get they sort of never get healthy enough to say, hey, great relationships are 50-50. I give to you one lunch, you give to me one lunch. Maybe at one lunch or one Starbucks, we go half and half unless there's an emergency. Dependent people kind of make it all about them. And they're not mean people, but they haven't learned to be healthy enough to say, wait a minute, I got to give back like I'm receiving. And so most people I've found, like people in your podcast, they're not dependent people. They don't have that issue. They just get afraid that they're going to be too much of a drain. Oh, I don't want to be high need. I don't want to drain people dry. And here's the thought. I think I figured this out. Most of us don't do it because we're afraid of that. But the absolute reality is that you probably got 3 or 4 friends that you don't tell how things are really going to, but you certainly listen to them. You certainly support them. You certainly help them. And if you were to say to them at lunch one day, can I just vent a bit? It sucks right now. And I don't have any answers, and I don't need it. But I just need a little time to throw it out there. These people will probably go, thank you. You're always the giver. You're always the listener. And for you to tell me that you're struggling and need something, I feel so honored. How can I help? It's just the opposite from what our fears say, Chris.
What would you have to say to leaders listening right now who might think that by letting their guard down, they're actually displaying weakness and then wouldn't be perceived as a strong leader to those in whom they lead?
I can tell you what the research says, because most of my world is in helping leaders and organizations to get to be better organizations. The research says that there are these 2 types of leaders. There's the bulletproof leader, like Superman or Captain Marvel, and bullets bounce off their chest. And then there's the vulnerable leader. And the bulletproof leader never has a bad day. Everything's fine. Everything's gravy. It's all the way up and all this. And then there's the other leader who says, we're struggling right now. And I'm part of this. And I'm making mistakes too. And we're going to get there. You would think that people say, oh, I want Superman. Nope, they don't. People are much more loyal to the vulnerable leader. And here's why. It's called the principle of identification. You can identify with the vulnerable leader. You know how they feel. You know how it is to be them. And you go, you get me. You struggle too, just like I do. I'm loyal to you. The bulletproof leader, you go, well, you're from another planet called Krypton. You're an alien. I can't even relate to you. I'll never be like that. And they're not loyal to them. Now, I'm not saying that every leader's got to show every part of their life to every person, because they're very private things. You've got to go get those vulnerable needs met in private settings. You can't talk about, really private stuff at a board meeting, but you can say, I make a difference in my training program between personal vulnerability and professional vulnerability. Personal vulnerability is personal. Professional vulnerability, you were struggling. Sometimes I get discouraged, but we've got answers, and we're going to help you. People will walk across hot coals for a vulnerable leader.
I understand that authenticity and vulnerability in relationships is really important, but I've found that some people expect us to open the gates of our heart wide open when we haven't established trust and rapport with them, especially at work. And even worse, they've not demonstrated that they're safe people. And then, Dr. Townsend, we get labeled as being inauthentic because we won't open up. So how do you coach people to handle that at work?
All right, let's role play it.
Okay.
I'll be Chris, and I'll be wanting to help people be authentic, but I know that there's limits to it. And you be the person who hasn't earned it yet,
right?
But you want me to kind of throw out all my stuff. I don't even know you that well. So anyway, okay, Sam. So what was your question?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. I just wish you'd be more of an open book. I mean, how are we supposed to grow tighter as a team if I don't know the ins and outs of your story and everything that makes you tick?
I appreciate that, and I do think that I am open on a professional level, Sam. There's the professional vulnerability and there's personal vulnerability. But what I found is that the work context that we're all in is very different than the life context. And the goal of work is performance, right? We're all supposed to, you and I are struggling and making this company healthy and kick butt and all that. And so it's really about performance. So my vulnerability has to be about things that keep me from getting where we need to go. And I want to keep it about things that are tied into that. That's why I'll talk to you about, I'll be vulnerable with you, Sam, about I missed, we lost $100,000 on the green account. I want to own what I did there. I want to be vulnerable about why our culture isn't what it should be. I want to be vulnerable about how hard it is to lead people sometimes. That's professional vulnerability. I'm happy to do that. But I'm not going to bring up my childhood and my marriage and whether my kids are okay or not. I don't think it's appropriate because it's not about performance. Does that make any sense, Sam?
Yeah, that's so hard. But, I think vulnerability could make us tighter as a team, like we're in the trenches together.
It could. But here's the problem. It diffuses things, and it makes us start to think that work is really my family. And I make a big distinction between my private life and my work life. I want to be very tight with you about my issues, my concerns, my fears about work situations. And what I found also, Sam, and I read research on this, is that when people begin bringing a lot of their personal life into the work context, all of a sudden it gets kind of gnarly between, well, somebody's going to be reporting to somebody else. Somebody writes checks and bonusing, and somebody has HR issues. What if you're that vulnerable with somebody that's writing a check to keep your salary going? So I found a very clean thing. We can be very vulnerable with each other about work issues, about concerns, but I keep the private out of it. And I think you'll be really happy with this approach, Sam.
Wow. Game over.
Something like that.
Game over. Dr. Townsend, that's so valuable because I think there are settings in which people believe that the level of disclosure makes a team tighter, and I just don't think that's the case.
I'd say it's not the level. I'd say it's the quality of disclosure.
Okay. That's good.
When somebody goes, oh, I screwed up on that thing, or I felt insecure when I gave the presentation, that's fine. When they say my father's an alcoholic, no, that's for their private life.
That's good. Yeah, that's good. Well, in relationships then, we're talking about reciprocity. One gives assistance, the other one needs help. For many, asking for help is hard. So I'd love to know real practically, what are some obstacles to asking for help?
There are several, and they have answers, but there's the top few that when I'm working with high-performing leaders that I see. One of them is the one we talked about earlier, that I shouldn't have any needs. So it'll discourage my people. They won't respect me. Well, just not true. The second one is shame. I can't accept that I have these parts of me, and so I'm embarrassed about them. And the only answer to that one is you've got to get in your private life and begin working on shame issues with a good friend or a good book or a good counselor or a coach, and begin to be comfortable with the fact that all of us have flaws, and stop feeling shamey about your flaws and just accept them and work on them. The third thing is we're not sure if people are in a mind to give us what we need. So it's sort of like, why should I ask when I don't know if they're too busy or whatever. And that's just true. You cannot get a guarantee that somebody will meet every need you have whenever you want to. And that's what adults do. You take a risk. And some people say, I'm too busy, or I've got my own stuff to deal with. You just got to shake that off and get resilient and say, I'll go to the next person. You can get those needs met if you've got the right kind of people. I talk in the book about the concept of life team. So if one person is, tied up or in a bad place, you just go to your next person. But you should never be without getting those needs met to function at very high levels to run an organization.
Yeah. This may sound repetitive, but I want to drill down on it just to make the point for the listeners. And the question is this: how do we grow more emotionally mature so that we actually have something of substance then to give people?
Well, Chris, I think we first need to know what that means. Emotionally mature is a really broad term, and psychologists have been studying for about 100 years, And so I just can't sit in a chair and go, today I'll be more emotionally mature. It's just sort of like, today I'll be a human. But I have a model that I can help your listeners with that I've written 30 books and sold 10 million copies about, that tell people what emotionally mature is. And here's what it is, and here's how you get there. So emotional maturity is this: the capacities required to meet the demands of reality. Emotionally mature people have the capacities that are required to meet the demands of reality. Financial demands, relational demands, career demands, self-help demands. Life has demands. And mature people have 4 capacities that help them to really pull off life. The emotionally mature person has these 4. The ability to bond. Bonding means what you and I have been talking about, to be vulnerable with other people, to really be open about areas of struggle, to feel okay about needing support from other people, and to also be able to draw out of other people as well. People that know how to bond tend to have a better life, and that makes career, relationships, everything better. Mm-hmm. The second one is boundaries. Well, you probably heard of that from
sure have. Yeah.
And boundaries are very, very critical in terms of the ability to do a few things. One, the ability to be defined as who you are and who you are not. I know who I am, and I know who I'm not. I'm clear about myself. Secondly, the ability to say no when I need to say no to somebody's need for my time or energy. Just, I can't do it. I don't have the time. That's a boundary. The third is to be able to confront when you need to, and to tell people, I've got a problem here, we've got to solve it. Those boundary skills create maturity in the area of boundaries. Emotional maturity again. So now we've got bonding as a capacity of emotional maturity. We've got boundaries. The third one is reality. And reality has to do with the ability to deal with life as it really is, not some ideal perfect life, but the life that we all kind of have. For example, how do I adapt to negative things? How do I adapt to loss? Do I know how to grieve things that have been hard for me? Do I judge myself when I screw up, or am I accepting of myself? Have I given up entitlement and the sense that I've got to be treated special? Can I accept reality? Reality is just about the negatives of life and how resilient and adaptive you can be to the tough times. Successful people are mature in that area of reality. And the fourth one is what's called capability. And what capability is first off, can I relate to the world and other people as an adult, and not like a little frightened child wanting approval, but not like a parent wanting to micromanage everybody? Can I just be an adult with other people? Yeah. Secondly, am I clear on my purpose in life? Do I know why I'm on the planet, what I'm good at? Thirdly, have I developed my talents to fit my purpose, which also involves passion? And then fourthly, do I have a strong work ethic? Or am I sort of ADD and a good starter and not finisher, but do I know how to drive home things and roll up my sleeves and get the work done? So your question was, how do you get emotionally mature? Well, you got to look at those 4 areas. Now, my new assessment instrument, the TPRAT, Townsend Personal Relational Assessment Tool, covers that, and it's part of the book. You can get tested by that on an online site from the book. And what you get is a score of those 4, and it gives you skills 1 to 10 on all 4 of those categories. And you get the skills like conversations you need to have, chapters you need to read, things to journal, stretching things to do to experience growth. That's how we get emotional maturity. We learn the 4 things, and we grow in skills in those 4 things to become the person who can deal with reality the best.
There's a thread, I think, in what I heard you say in the last few minutes, and that's the ability to problem solve, because I think we all have to learn how to problem solve and communicate effectively in order to have a healthy relationship. I'd love to know, why do you think our ability to problem solve in relationships has suffered so much in culture today?
Yeah, it is a big problem, Chris. And I think that that's because, like any other skill, we don't have experience in that skill. Most people that have a hard time solving problems in relationships, instead of, getting discouraged and bailing and ending the relationship, probably didn't see that modeled in a family of origin or in their school or in their leadership training class or their church or whatever. They didn't see people say, oh, we're kind of at odds here. We're going to stick together and we're going to butt heads and figure this out and respect each other, and we're going to go for a solution. They saw people in their lives that went, no, I'm not happy here. I'm checking out way too soon. So then they don't even know how it happens. So what that means is, if you want to solve the problem of not being able to solve problems, you've got to go get those skills somewhere else, which means a great mentor, a great coach. We have great books on that, seminars, and a great life team where you're going to have people in your life that you care about who can live in connection and support and love, but also be able to say difficult truths to each other in a what I call a healthy, disruptive way. That's how you get that skill if you don't have it.
Earlier in the conversation, I know you opened up, you talked about relational nutrients, but can we drill down on relational nutrients even more? And I just want to ask, how do they function? What are they? What do they look like? And maybe what are some examples of relational nutrients that we should be aware of?
Not a problem. In fact, in the book, I've got the list and the chart, and people who like this kind of material, you could just go to our website, relationalnutrients.com, and they can download their own copy of this to put in their smartphone or print it out for themselves. If you look at the 4 quadrants, I'll just give you an example of one and with each one. For example, in the quadrant of be present with each other. Remember I said, shut up and listen and be nice?
Sure.
One of those is going to be attunement. Now, attunement is sort of a psychobabble word, and forgive me because I'm a psychologist, but attunement is sort of like empathy. And I'm going to read what the card says. Be aware of what another is experiencing and respond to it. Chrissy, have you ever had lunch with somebody and you said something like, I'm struggling in some area, and they went, yeah, what about me? I'm struggling in some other areas too. How did you feel?
Check, please.
Check, please, indeed.
It's true.
They didn't tune into you. They started talking about themselves. We need to attune to each other, because then people feel like, hey, I'm not alone. Somebody else gets it here at lunch. They understand how my life is challenged and I feel somewhat overwhelmed and defeated. That's great. It's so funny. We feel energy when somebody enters the negative parts of our life. Okay, that's a relational nutrient. Something good just happened. Now let's go to the second one, convey the good. Let's take an affirmation. I fly a lot as well as you, and you know what TSA says, if you're in an airport, if you see it, say it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Same thing is true. Some people, it just matters so much that somebody went, hey, I noticed what you did on the green account. I thought you killed it. You just rocked. Thank you so much for all that effort. Boy, they can go a week on that because somebody affirmed something good about themselves. That's a relational nutrient. It's like a little shot of Prozac. It's good for us. Third one is provide reality. Let me find, here's one. Insight, convey a deeper understanding. I've got this cash flow problem, and I've been telling my people to work harder, get more accounts receivable, and it's not working. Well, maybe we got to take a look at your culture. Seems to me that the culture of your business is that you're either kind of like everything's fun, or you just kind of, when things get tight, you kind of get mean, you turn into a tyrant. Why don't you just add some structural protocols instead of being the fun boss that then becomes the mean boss? Protocols of what the accounts receivable are, when they're supposed to be done, how do you invoice them? Is it a net 30? Is it a net 15? Give them a good structure so they kind of feel like, okay, now I have reality. Mm-hmm. That's just providing reality. Mm-hmm. And then the fourth quadrant, call to action. Here's one. Development, create a growth environment. You got somebody in your company and you know that they have potential, but they don't have the capacity they need. You say, hey, I think there's a seminar that would help you, or there's a program that would help you, or a book that would help you. Let's help you with that, because I want to help you to develop yourself. Mm-hmm. We give those to each other, and we need them from each other. But I can tell you one thing, is working with leaders for a long, long time. Leaders are pretty good at giving things to others, and they really aren't very good at asking for these for others. And you've got to go out of your head a bit and say, how can I fill everybody else's tanks in my business and my organization and all that if I'm not getting my tank filled too? So you got to remember that the people in your life that love you will go, I'm happy to do that. And that's how the world goes around, and that's how organizations succeed.
Yeah. So we've talked about what health looks like then, and I want to ask one more question along that line. And that's this. What do you believe is the most common oversight or misconception you believe people and leaders have about pursuing greater wholeness in their own relationships then?
When I work with high-capacity leaders, either for a corporation or a family-owned business or nonprofit or church, it's always two big questions they have, Chris. One of them is, does this stuff really work? Why don't I just work harder and smarter? And you see this a lot in alpha males and alpha females too. A normal person, when they know they don't have the creativity, energy, mojo they need, they're supposed to go do something about it, take more supplements or find a friend or something. Mm-hmm. But an alpha will wait until they're in an emergency room with an IV drip in their arm. They'll go, maybe I have a problem. Mm-hmm. So some of them just don't believe in the process of growth, relational growth, personal growth. They just think working harder and smarter. And they tend, unfortunately, to die early and not be that successful, with some exceptions. The second ones, they know they believe in it, but they're just afraid. And what I mean by afraid is they're kind of scared of like entering the more vulnerable world. Like, I'm going to lose my mojo. I'll just become this like touchy-feely person, and nothing could be further from the truth. The people that really succeed well the right way, the ones that I work with and I have so much respect for, they're very vulnerable. They're very open. They got great relationships, but they kick butt in the market, and they're successful and creative, and they're competitive, and they don't lose market share. They don't lose their mojo. They don't lose their initiative. They don't lose their aggression. In fact, those things are even better because they got their tank full. But the misnomer is, if I start feeling what I need to feel, I'll lose all that. Not true.
Well, let's apply this then, because what I hear you saying is like a prescription that we would need for the cold or flu or whatever, or like nutrients we take. We have to make sure that we're taking them on a regular basis and then allowing our bodies to metabolize them in order for them to do good. So in other words, if I'm hearing you correctly, we have to be on a steady diet of personal growth in order to make sure that we're not living blindly, right?
Well, let's take it to the business analogy.
Okay.
What have we been hearing from anywhere from Jim Collins to anybody that writes well? It's called 3 words: grow or die.
Yes.
There's no steady state business. You're either on the way up or on the way down, because that's the way the world works. And so the same thing is true in personally being the person you need to be the most optimized, smart, energetic, successful person. You've got to be putting energy into your growth, or things begin to deteriorate. There's this kind of law of entropy, right? And the law of entropy says that things are wearing down. And I mean, if you're over 25, look in the mirror and you'll know what I mean. I mean, it's just, that's the way it works. And successful people are always putting new energy and information and people in their life to stay optimized. So we don't really have a choice if we want to be successful people.
So I think workplaces have far too many bosses, people who are simply elevated into management, and far too few leaders. And we want to grow from boss to leader. So I'd love to ask, what's the best relational growth step? Since we're talking about professional environments now, what's the best relational growth step we need to take in this process?
Get a coach.
Yeah.
If you know how to help people as a boss, meaning you can give people goals, and you can give them resources, and you give them an accountability structure so they know what's expected of them by a certain date, and you'll give them the money and the personnel and the desk to do it. That's being a boss, and that's a good thing. But you will never lead anybody to what they're not capable of or what they could be capable of. You'll never get the most out of that person unless you know what leadership's about. We used to think that successful people are good leaders, and the research doesn't back that up. I know people that have made $1 billion, but they did it because they had one idea and they gave it to a bunch of people who ran it. They weren't leaders at all, but just great, had a great idea, and they just kind of ran the numbers.
Yeah.
But if you really want to lead people, meaning inspire them to be somebody they're not, help them find their passions, help them to be part of a team that's transcendent and transforms, you got to go get help, because you can't just make that up. You got to go get a coach and take a course and learn about all the skills of leadership. And fortunately, we're living in a world now, there's a lot of good information about leadership development. So don't try to make it up on the fly.
The answer to this question may be what you just said in quoting Jim Collins, but what's at stake here? If leaders don't put this need for relational health at the top of their list, what's at stake? Is it simply just they plateau and then they just die as a leader?
Yeah, if you read, for example, How the Mighty Fall, it's a great book, After Good to Great, where he studied these companies for, 15 years, was it? And they went, some of them that didn't have hubris, that means pride and arrogance, they did a lot better. And some of them that didn't take care of that, it got worse. There's just no middle ground. Just like there's no middle ground with weight loss or marriage or your financial 401k. There's always grow or die. And so when you kind of accept that life is going to be always about putting energy and intentionality into being a healthier, greater person and getting help outside yourself, you're okay. But if you kind of get to this point where you say, no, I have enough smarts and I have enough, experience that I don't need anything else, that's when we always see the decline happen. You don't want to wish that on anybody. There's too much resource out there. Be a perpetual grower who is doing new things and staying young at heart all the time.
Yeah, that's good. Well, Dr. Townsend, as we finish our conversation today, I'd love to know, what are some key components of building our life team? You say that we all need a life team, but I'm really curious to ask, how did you build yours? Is that using the 7 C's from your book?
Yeah, Chris, it is. That was the whole idea, because I believe you got to have somewhere between 3 and 10 people that you are committed to, that are committed to you, that want to grow together, want to meet together. Maybe they're not in the same place. I've got people on my life team. I've got 5 or 6 right now, and some of them don't even know each other in different parts of the country, but we meet and talk regularly to support each other. And they're really people that want to perform at very high levels. They want to make a big success out of their life. They've got great values, but they also want to be vulnerable and be open about what they're dealing with. And they want to receive connection, but they also want to receive and give truth to each other. And so sometimes I'll be dealing with a CEO, and I'll say, listen, let me look at your support system. And they'll go, oh, yeah, I've got my spouse and my Labrador Retriever, Max. That's what I've got. And I'll go, well, Max has to do it because he's a lab, and your spouse is probably really tired. Then they'll introduce me to the spouse. The spouse will go, oh, my gosh, all I hear is, this person's fears and things that are hard with them, and I wish they'd go out somewhere. You just can't do that to your spouse, and you can't do that to your dog either. You got to spread it out. So life team is 3 to 10 people where there are some shared essential values, and they want to achieve great things, and they want to be vulnerable, and all these cool things, and really good things happen. So then somebody will say, I don't have that. Okay, and the problem with a leader is that every time the leader gets in a group, guess what happens? The leader leads the group, because they're magnetic, high-performing people. So they never get in a place where they can take the leader hat off and say, this is just really me. They're always kind of running things, and it's not good for them. So I told them, okay, here's the system. And I worked it out for myself, and it works. If you just can't think of anybody in your life that you could be mutual and vulnerable and high-performing with, go to Outlook's contacts. And everybody's got, I don't know, between 700 and several thousand people on Outlook. Give yourself an hour or so and go down that list and think, who would be potential that I like them, good chemistry, I like who they are, they're interesting, they're kind, but they're also open and they accomplish things. And then you'll run down that list and you'll go, yeah, I haven't seen them for a while. What about, oh, yeah, how about that person? Potential. And then you'll come down to maybe, I don't know, 15, 20 people. And these are nice people. And then what you do is you pick the top one there, the one that you think's the best fit, and it's all in the book, is you ask them for lunch. Hey, I haven't seen you for a couple months. Let's go grab lunch. And you go grab lunch. And here's what you do in that lunch. You make one vulnerable baby step. You say something besides being bulletproof. You say something like, life's kind of hard right now, or I got some challenges at work, some cultural things, some financial things. My marriage we're sort of struggling. I've got a kid who's smoking weed, whatever. One sort of baby step. And that person will give you 1 of 3 responses about whether they're worth being on your life team or not. Response number 1 will be, man, the weather out here is amazing, isn't it? Okay. Now, what are they telling you, Chris?
It sounds like they're wanting to just kind of change the subject and not really dive deep with me.
There you go. They don't want to go there. Who knows? Maybe they're anxious about it. Maybe they just don't maybe they only want to have shallow relationships. Nice person, but not life team.
For sure.
The second thing they might say would be something like, well, obviously, let me get you a book on teens. That'll help you a lot. And are you taking supplements? And, I think there's a conference you need to go to. And as well as that, I think, you need to be getting up earlier and working harder. And by the way, are you working out? And what they're telling you is, you just made me so nervous with your vulnerability that I'm going to give you a billion ideas about advice, because I don't want to think that I've got any issues. Yeah. Nice person, probably not the right person. But the third category is gold. The third category is the person stops and puts their fork down and goes, your daughter on weed? I had no idea. I'm so how could I just know I know your family. I know how important your kids are. Tell me more about it. How'd that feel? What's going on there? And you go, man, they're listening to me and they care about me, and they start talking about their kids or whatever. Now you got something different. So that person's gold. You have 2 more lunches with that person over a period of a couple months or whatever. This process takes about 4 to 6 months, honestly. And then if the third conversation goes right like that, then you say, I want to tell you something. got an idea. I've been getting serious about my personal growth. I've been reading all this research about how business and organizational success go better with personal growth. And I'm putting together a kind of a structured life team, nothing really anal retentive, but sort of like just getting together every week or two for lunch and just opening up about what's really going on as a safe place to talk about. And we just, support each other. And I think you're a really good person, and it's cool to be with you. And I'm getting a few people together, and are you interested? Now, when I've done that with CEOs and business owners that I work with as my clients, Chris, 90% of them will tell me. They'll come back and they'll go, so I did this, and you won't believe what happened. I'll say, what happened? They'll say, people went, oh my gosh, I'm signing up now. This is what I've needed. This is the missing piece for me. I don't have anybody I can be real with but my spouse. Thank you. Because people are dying for this. So that's how you create the life team.
That's so good. Well, Dr. Townsend, you have a ton of resources that I'd love for everyone to know about, especially, as we'd mentioned earlier, the TPRAT personality assessment. Where can we find all these resources?
drtownsend.com is my website, and everything's on there. Dr like doctor, drtownsend.com. Everything's there. You can get the assessment tool, Townsend Personal Relational tool there. You can also find out about the Townsend Institute, which we have an fully online institute where we give people verified masters in organizational leadership or a certificate, a master's in executive coaching and consulting or a certificate, a master's in counseling or certificate. So whatever person wants in their career, we've got it. We also have the Townsend Leadership Group, and this is where we help leaders on a professional level, not an academic level, to be in a small group. I've probably got 35 or 40 leaders around the country, and they take people in a small group for once a month of intensive work on strategy, on vision, on their personal life, on their EQ, and it's kind of phenomenal, the transformations that come out there. So lots of good stuff there.
Dr. Townsend, is there anything else we haven't covered today that you'd love to leave with the listeners?
Yeah. By the way, the website for the book itself is peoplefuelbook.com, and there's a lot of information about that, about that, and we're putting out a product right about this time where it's called People Fuel in the Box, or that's the working title, where people in our group, in our company, they go out to organizations and present the materials, the training materials. So the way that, very similar to the way that Patrick Lencioni does 5 Dysfunctions. You have these all-day meetings where there's a video and workbooks, and our consultants come in and facilitate the conversation. We're really excited about how the People Fuel concepts can help not just our personal lives, but also our organizational lives succeed and thrive.
Yeah, that's so good. Well, Dr. Townsend, as always, you just bring such wealth, such wisdom to the conversation today. So thanks again for joining me here on the show once again. I just appreciate you so much.
Thank you, Chris, and keep up the good work.
Well, hey, I trust you gained a lot of wisdom from that conversation with Dr. John Townsend. So right now, go grab a copy of his brand new book, People Fuel, over at wintoday.tv. And then, of course, please do check out Dr. John Townsend's resources over at drtownsend.com. That's drtownsend.com. Well, next week on the show starts our annual Win Today summer break, in which you're going to hear 5 of the hottest conversations we've had here on the show, featuring guests like Jamie Winship, Dave and Ann Wilson, Chris Hewerts, Bethel Music's Brian Johnson, and more. So here's a preview of next week's episode with one of your favorites, Jamie Winship.
Because what's true is always real, but what's real to us is often not true. And we get stuck there. Truth always liberates. Reality often traps us. And that's what I would say is the difference between the intuitive and the rational mind, or is that idea. The intuitive liberates and enlarges, and the rational reduces and can trap.
Win Today's summer break starts next week right here with Jamie Winship. Don't miss it. Hey, many of you are brand new listeners of Win Today, and for that, I just want to say thank you. So if you haven't done so already, be sure to hit that subscribe button right now on whichever podcast host you're tuning into. And each and every week, a fresh episode of the show will arrive to you automatically. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, will you take 30 seconds right now to rate and write a review of the show? Doing so helps grow the listenership of Win Today, and that would mean so much to me. Well, hey, until next week, visit me over at wintoday.tv for blog posts and archive podcasts, all aimed at helping you design your roadmap to wholeness from the inside out. Have a great week. We'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.